Joining me now is Bob Bianchi. He is a Law and Crime Network host and a former prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney. Thank you so much for being here. Bob, I know that you've been following the Jussie Smollett case pretty closely, and now Chicago is suing the Empire Star. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, you know, Stephanie, when we talked the last time, Jussie Smollett was saying that he was thinking of suing them, which I called laughable and insanity. And my position was that the city of Chicago and the police department should, in fact, sue him for all the time, money, and expense that they went through for the perpetration of this fraud, for which Ms. Fox, the district attorney, didn't have the courtesy to go to her law enforcement partners before she dismissed the case, which was an insult and a slap in the face. And then Jussie Smollett gets out there and still continues to talk about himself as a victim. So this is the perfect vehicle for the Chicago Police Department and the city of Chicago to say, no, Kim Fox, no, Mr. Smollett, we're going to drag you in, and we're going to get depositions and interrogatories and discoveries. And you know why, Stephanie? Because on top of the fact that Ms. Fox decided not to let the police know that she was going to dismiss the charges after $170,000 worth of investigation, she also allowed the record to be sealed so we, the public, couldn't transparently see, although we all knew, what she did here was wrong. So good. Now, Mr. Smollett, you'll have your opportunity to tell your story in the civil case. Good for Chicago, good for the police department.
Yeah, and really quickly to recap, it was the Cook County Attorney's Office that dropped the 16 charges against Smollett. They didn't let the Chicago Police Department know what they were doing, so the police department was pretty much caught off guard. So now this complaint filed by the city says they're seeking relief against the defendant for false statements that he made to the city. They're also seeking recovery of the cost of necessary services provided by the city due to the defendant's violations of the MCC, and in support alleges as follows. So they went over the nature of the case. They went over the factual allegations, which is a lot of the stuff that we already looked into, like the text messages between the Osundario brothers and Jussie Smollett, the surveillance cameras the night of the alleged attack. And so where do you, is this unusual? I mean, to have a city go after somebody for the expenses and the resources that they use to investigate this case. Is Smollett responsible for this? Does he have to pay this back? Is this unprecedented?
I wouldn't say it's unprecedented, but this whole scenario is a little unusual. What this is the Chicago PD and City Police Department saying that, look, we want the public to understand something here, and it's very important because it's been confused. When you do what it is that I did, I ran an agency like Ms. Fox. So let me explain just briefly to answer your question. They had to do an investigation. That investigation was done in conjunction with the Cook County District Attorney's Office. The District Attorney's Office reviewed the police reports that the Chicago PD and their own people came to a conclusion that Mr. Smollett was responsible for this, that he was guilty of this. So they presented it to a grand jury. That's the prosecutor's way of saying we believe these charges are not only real, but we believe he should be held accountable for them by way of an indictment. So the fact that the indictment afterwards winds up getting dismissed, well, you didn't even have to bring the charges. You didn't have to bring it into the grand jury. If you believe that that was the ultimately proper resolution of this case, then you could have dismissed it way before it went that far. Now, remember, the district attorney's office here isn't saying that he didn't do it. What they're saying is they believe that this was the appropriate way to resolve this case, which is laughable. So, in this laughable situation, the police department was left, if you will, with its pants pulled down. They were getting kicked in the teeth by the district attorney's failure to back them up with respect to this case. So, in my opinion, this lawsuit is filed to let the public know we had the goods. The problem isn't with us. The problem is with Ms. Fox, and that's why this lawsuit is filed, in addition to the $170,000 or $130,000, whatever it is, although that is unusual that police would sue. They're suing here mainly, in my opinion, to let the public know the truth.
Well, in this complaint, they said they spent over 1,800 hours of overtime investigating this case. They also spent $130,000 in overtime pay. That's just overtime. We don't know how much exactly they're looking for, but like you said, I think that they're trying to clear their name because there is question. There are some out there in our country who believe that the Chicago Police Department did something dirty here, that they tried to frame Smollett in this alleged hate hoax when the evidence suggests otherwise. And there's mountains of evidence, if you will. Meantime, TMZ is reporting that Jussie Smollett is in Hawaii on vacation. There's video of it. He's smiling. He's laughing. He's having a great time. If you were him, would you be having a good time right now? Isn't this complaint and this lawsuit going to open up a can of worms for him?
Yeah, I mean, if I were him, I don't answer questions like that because if I were him, I wouldn't have been in this situation.
Yeah.
If I were him, with all the fame and popularity, I wouldn't need to contrive a story. If I were him, I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff. But yeah, he's got concerns here because the FBI is investigating this case still as well because allegedly, and it's an allegation, he sent a letter to himself, so he used the mails, which makes it a federal offense, to basically send a letter to himself saying, I'm coming after you, I'm attacking you. In other words, part of this whole continuing fraud. And you know what, Stephanie, listen, if the guy was innocent, if the guy is not guilty of these charges, that's fine. I'm not saying that. But what happened here was the prosecutor themselves said that they're not saying he's innocent or that he's not guilty. Rather, what they're saying is that they believe that this was a just way of resolving this case. And you know what? All the defense lawyers in Cook County should be lining up like we all are here in New Jersey and New York and saying to the prosecutors, hey, can we get a Smollett deal for our clients too? Can we get a dismissal and a sealing of the record? You know, one of the things that's really insidious here, Stephanie, and I'll end with my rant here, is that what he did is deprecate, lessen, weaken bias, intimidation, and racial hate crime laws that are there for real victims of these things. Because guys like him now, when another one happens that may be real, causes people to say, well, maybe that's a Smollett too.
Question, how do you get out of this civil suit if you're Smollett? So they filed the complaint. Now what happens? Would he have the option to just pay what the police department wants and just end this whole thing? Because the Chicago Police Department had already reached out, I believe, with a letter saying that they wanted their money back, what the city had spent. And then Smollett's attorney said that they were offended and they weren't going to pay the money. So now that's why we got to this point. So is there a way for Smollett to kind of just push this under the rug and kind of forget about it?
Stephanie, I haven't read the whole complaint, but here's my sense of something that you had read to me previously. If he pays the money, if they were only looking for monetary damages and he pays the money, he may be able to get out of the case. But I believe they're suing him for more. I think they're suing him for false statements he made about the department and false statements that he made during the course of the case. So that would be that it's just more than monetary damages, i.e. $130,000 or $170,000 for covering all of those expenses that they put when they put out there, the police department, because they were trying to catch a hate crime guy. I think that they're going to basically, in my opinion, twist him so that he has to give a deposition so that they can prove maybe, potentially, that he is in fact responsible for this. And keep something in mind, Stephanie. It's nuanced, but it's important. Because he's still within the statute of limitations for filing a criminal charge, anything he says in the civil case could develop further evidence that could implicate him in the criminal case. So as a lawyer that's handled these kinds of scenarios before, what we typically tell a client to do that's in Smollett's position is assert your right to remain silent in the civil case so they can't gather evidence against you. And if he does that, he very well may cause a default, which means the city wins, or at trial, the jury is advised he refused to participate in his defense. He's in a real checkmated scenario.
And then what about the Osundario brothers? They're the ones who admitted to committing this alleged hate crime. There was the video camera footage of them, the surveillance video, them at a gas station or something buying all of the materials used in this alleged hate hoax. So what happens to them? I've been trying to find out where he is. You'd think that these reporters in Chicago or the New York Times would, dispatch some reporters out to the city to find out what the brothers are up to. TMZ was reporting that the brothers are still selling personal training online. And, are they just off scot-free? Or we even heard Smollett's attorney say that they know who committed the hate crime. So are these dangerous guys, or what happens with them?
Well, they were cooperating with the police department, and it's clear, at least from the facts that I know of this case, that they were the individuals that were caught, on that videotape. So if Mr. Smollett was in fact not guilty, if he in fact had not done this fraud or this scam, if he in fact is innocent, quote unquote, although the prosecutor didn't say that, but if that's his argument, then those two guys should be locked up because they committed a crime. Come on, let's be real. The reason they're not going to get arrested is because the police and prosecutors understand it was all a scam between all of them.
If you were the victim of a hate crime, wouldn't you do everything in your power to make sure that the attackers, were sent to jail?
Of course, but these are people that he works with. It's ludicrous to even talk about this being a hate crime because we all know what happened here. Of course he's not going to be looking for the attackers because there are none. It was a setup. It was orchestrated. It's a fraud. It's a sham. So there's nothing to look for.
Yeah, and again, people are downplaying this, saying, oh, well, it's not a big deal. Let's move on. But it is a big deal because this whole alleged hate hoax, at the end of the day, this was to smear Trump supporters. Smollett had told police officers it was white men who said something about this is MAGA country. And this is a big deal. And it was also a smear on the president and now a smear on the Chicago Police Department. So I think that we deserve some answers.
Yeah, listen, as a guy who ran an agency and was instrumental in helping pass bias and hate crime legislation, again, I say they deprecated the value of that for real people who are being victimized. And this is a big problem in our country. There are people that are being victimized. So we as prosecutors want to bring valuable and legitimate cases and punish them to end the conduct. When somebody cries rape that wasn't raped, when somebody cries hate crime that wasn't hate crimed, when somebody says the cops beat them when the cops didn't, or the cops, you have lessened a very serious societal problem that we do have when we try to eradicate those very things for true and real victims here. So, and also, let's not forget, does our country really need, in this time of division, somebody faking something that even divides us further? All he did is give fodder to those who don't believe in hate crime legislation and race-related issues, the ability to say, you see, this is why we shouldn't have these laws. It's a shame.